What is up, my ninja? Shinobi here, bringing you a Magic the Gathering Arena video guide on getting to Master Rank, as I just did in the beta here for MTG Arena. Master Tier 1, highest rank you can get to. I was able to do this. Feels good to do it, especially in a very control-heavy meta, and I only played aggro the entire time. And there's control decks that are very difficult to win against. You have to draw really well or play, certain different ways, and there isn't sideboards. It's not best of 3 games, and we have limited cards to deal with decks like Approach, for instance, whereas Approach, blue-white control Approach, is a good deck IRL, but it's a great deck in MTG Arena, probably the best deck in MTG Arena, and I didn't want to play it. Everyone plays Approach. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do it by my rules and play decks that I thought were fun, that I enjoyed playing, so that's what I did. I played aggro decks all the way from start to finish. So I'm going to talk about those decks in here and run through kind of which decks I played from start to finish. So if you're only here in this video to look at the main deck, the deck that took me from halfway through gold, through diamond, and to master, then click the timestamp on the screen up here and just skip to that, where I talk a little bit more in depth about that deck and kind of how to play it and such. If you want me to go through and talk about that deck a lot more in depth and like how to play against control with it, how to play against aggro with it, such and so forth, then let me know in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. If there's enough people that are interested in it, then I will make that video. But I'm just going to kind of briefly run through the decks here, but I will spend more time on the deck that was the one to take us to the promised land. So what did I do first off? When you first get into the MTG beta, if you haven't done so already, link in the description for MTG Arena beta. Sign up for it to get in. Now, when you do get into the beta, you are going to be given a few packs off the bat. Now, I was given some packs off the bat, and those cards that I got help you determine which decks you're going to play. So the card that I got right off the bat that helped me determine which deck I was going to play right away was Hezerit. Now, Hezerit is a very prominent and very good card in Red Deck Wins, and Red Deck Wins actually does quite well in MTG Arena and in IRL as well. Now, don't worry, I didn't play Red Deck Wins all the way. You're like, oh, you bash on Approach, but, then you play Red Deck Wins all the way. Actually, no. The first deck I did play was Red Deck Wins, and I played it up until about Silver, and then that's when I started making the other decks. So let's first show you kind of the decks that I played right off the bat. So this is kind of this was kind of like a starter Red Deck Wins that I did. So let's go through and run the cards here for you. Fanatical Firebrand's great card. It's a common. The Lavamancer, I added those in when Dominaria came out. Then keep in mind, I've only been in the beta for about 3 weeks now, so I had limited cards to work with to get to where I wanted to go, and I didn't spend any money in that way. I only did some drafts to accumulate cards and did my dailies and grinded quite a bit to get cards and such. If you have better cards for Red Deck Wins or any of these decks that I'm going to show you that fit better, that's what you want to do anyways, right? You want to add in, say, something like, let's see, what's her name? Add in the Scar Mage, Soul Scar Mage. Like, you want to add those in. In my actual Red Deck Wins deck, I do play this card, but this was more of a starter thing. So keep in mind, when you're just getting into it, you just want to have some good starter cards to get you started to get into it. And you do get a bunch of cards just for joining the beta, and then you get those packs as well. So this is kind of the direction that I went. So yeah, the Lavamancer, playing Magma Sprays, which is almost a dead card against control, but definitely good against aggro and mirror match and such. Playing the Earthshaker Kenras. I crafted a few of these early on because they are good, very good. The Goblin Trailblazer, common here. Harsh Mentor, just played one of these because I think you get it automatically, I'm pretty sure. Lightning Strike, uncommon, very good card. Flame of Kel, this came out with Dominaria. So added one of those in there. Really nice for, after you get a Hezret into play and your hand's empty, you play Flame of Kel, and you get to draw some cards. And then the bonus damage that you do on the third effect on the Saga actually can be pretty devastating. Then we had Crasher here, very awesome card, very good turn 3 play to do and put pressure on. Same with Captain Lannery here, had one of those, so threw that in there. This guy I just got, I was using a Hijack before, and I replaced Hijack with Keldon Overseer when I got that. Rampaging Frostodon, throw one of those in there. I think you even just get one for free, I can't remember. Hezret, like I talked about before. Rekindling Phoenix, very good card, hard to deal with, takes like multiple cards to deal with it unless it's like gets sealed away or cast out or something. Charging Monster, this, uncommon, gives you some, just gas, you just want to go. Same thing with Lava Bringer, Glory Bringer, gonna do that for you too. And then playing some Sun Scorched Deserts, and then also your land. So this was kind of the deck that I started off with, and then got to about silver. Then I jumped into Dinos and Black-White Vamps. So let's take a look at the Dinos first. These two decks I used from about silver to about halfway through gold. So here we have Lannerells, which we got in Dominaria, which was nice to add to the deck. Then we also have the Huntmaster, which is nice for giving haste to certain dinosaurs that you have, and they cost less, helping you get more dinosaurs out there. This guy is pretty good, especially against aggro. Drover, I had one of these, so I threw it in there, and it gives me mana. I might be able to just take that out. Rampaging again, very strong card, especially against, like a Black-White Vamps or something like that. Ranging Raptors, nice for getting that ramp up there. Savage Stomp, super awesome for getting good trades the way that you want them. This can help you, make room to swing and win the game. Thrashing, really good for getting rid of things like Seal Away or Cast Outs, or even Ixalons as well. Very good for getting rid of those, and just a good stable card itself. Then the Forerunner, nice for helping you search for a dinosaur, and then you get to do 1 damage to everything, so it works well against aggro. Like, weenie decks usually get crushed by a deck like this, but Black-White Vamps and Dinos have somewhat of a difficult time against control decks like Approach and like Black-Blue Control, so that's why I switched from these decks to the deck that I ended up using to go all the way with. But these decks can be very good. Like, it comes down to the draw, it comes down to the mulligans and such. Raptor's nice because it helps you clear some things here. Raging Raptor, once again, you get to do 1 damage to something, so you could do it like to your Raptor here and get another land. Charging just gives you another dinosaur that gives you more damage. You're playing an aggro deck, just trying to be aggro. Then this guy's good too. When he enters the battlefield, do 1 damage to everything. This could be very useful. And then the Registor Alpha, nice card, gives haste to your other dinosaurs and makes a 3/3, which is good value off this card. The Primal Storm, really nice, especially if you give it haste, because the effect takes off right away when you attack with it. So very good. And then Carnage Tyrant is huge, especially against control. We're going to talk about this boy a little bit more later on. And then Primal Hunger for just that huge beast to just throw that in there and just stomp. Using the Heshep Oasis to get some extra, damage through, can be very nice. And then I don't have any of the rare green red lands. If you have those, then that would be good to use. But this is pretty much what I ran for the starter Dinos deck. This is when I was starting to accumulate a little bit more cards. Then we're moving on here to the Black-White Vamps. Now, this was one of my favorite decks to play, period. Can be very quick, very fast, really, and then having the lifelink, going up against red deck wins with this deck, especially if you deal with their Rampaging Ferocidon. It's just It's so good. It's so good. It's like sure you can swing for 5. I'm gonna swing for 5 and heal for 5. So then you're changing the life totals by such a huge margin. It can be very powerful, especially when all the tools come into effect. Legion's Landing, very nice to have for this. Good turn 1 play to make. Then this guy's also a good turn 1. I won quite a few games just by flying over. Like we have both had a standstill of big boards, lots of creatures, but this guy just flew over a couple times to get the W. So good. Vanguard, very nice. Keeps it alive too, so hard to get rid of. The Martyr, quite good as well. Keeps guys on the board. You know, when you're playing aggro, it's about board control. It's about keeping dudes on the board. Seal Away, threw one of those in there just because I needed another card for my mana and such. But then we had Dark Legion Zealot. It's only a common, easy to get, helps you filter your deck a bit and get some stuff. Legion's Lieutenant, I would say if you are going to play vampires, craft 4 of these as quick as possible because this is like a key card for your deck. Gideon was also kind of pretty good, actually, in a lot of situations, especially going up against some really crazy aggro decks, like someone puts like a Lyra in play or something like that. You're like, oh, nope, I prevent your damage, you know, and it can keep you alive against, you know, certain things with the emblem, which is nice. And you can protect it because you have a lot of dudes to chump block things to protect him. Then using the Maverin here, very nice for helping get more dudes on the board. The Queen's Commission, nice for just getting some tokens, more dudes. Radiant Destiny, awesome card. Allows you to get your vampires big. That's why you just want to keep getting them bigger and bigger. Cast Out for, this is in here specifically for removing things like planeswalkers and such, you know. And then Settle the Wreckage for the aggro matchup. Important because, you know, they never see it coming. You know, you're playing an aggro deck, like Settle the Wreckage in an aggro deck. But yeah, like I will literally bait people into it swinging with everything just so I can settle, and that's the game, you know. So very powerful card, does really well in control decks, and it also has done well in this deck as well, just having 1 in there. It does suck when you go against control though. That's why there's only 1 in the deck, and because it costs 4. Sanctum Seeker won me quite a few games. You don't even have to, you know, resolve the damage from your attacks. This is when you attack with vampires. So you got like 10 dudes out there. I swing with everything. Before blockers, you're dead. You know, it's like, it's nice, man. It's nice to have one of those. Call the Feast gets more dudes on the board. This won me quite a few games as well. The Crested Sunmare, they don't really see it coming. You know, you swing with a 1/1. You're like, why do you swing with that 1/1 lifelink? I block, idiot. You know, and then you're like, Crested Sunmare. Now I get 2 horsies, and you know, one of them's indestructible, and if they don't have a way to deal with this card, then you very quickly build up and win the game. I've had situations where I've had like 10 of these on the board, and the guy just conceded. Champion of Dust is actually a free card, I think. Some of these cards are free cards too when you first start getting into MTG Arena. And yeah, it's a good card, helps you draw cards, very nice. I got one of the Isolated Chapels, so I threw one in. This is nice too because you say vampire on here, you pick a creature type, pick vampire. It helps a lot, and yeah. So this was pretty much the deck that I did for this, and now let's move on to the deck that I played from about halfway through Gold all the way through Diamond and then to Master. And the deck that I guess you can say would be kind of the most consistent throughout this journey. Now, I say Black White Vamps was pretty consistent. Red Deck Wins is pretty consistent. Dinos, sometimes you can get land screwed or whatever, but Dinos was pretty good. And then Mono Green, the deck that I used all the way up to Master there. This was very consistent in a lot of situations, especially if you mulligan correctly and such. Let's take a look at the deck here on what I did, and keep in mind, there's still a lot of cards that I'm missing in the game, so this deck could even be better, honestly. It could be, but it did the job. It did what it needed to do, and yeah. So I'm going to talk about this deck a little bit more in depth and how you play the deck than I did about the previous decks. I just kind of talked about why those cards are good. Now let's talk about you know, how this deck synergizes well, and, you know, how it's good against control, and it can be also good against aggro. Just a very good, well-rounded deck, in my opinion. This deck revolves around a couple of key aspects. Llanowar Elves, very crucial. Definitely craft 4 of these right off the bat. I mean, it's a common, right? Very crucial card, because going first is what you want to do, just like most aggro decks want to go first, right? But having that turn 2 3 mana cost play can be devastating to your opponent. Now, what do I mean by that? So let's say you go first, play a land, play Llanowar Elf, your turn. He puts a land into play, your turn. Back to you. Now you put a land into play and drop, you know, a 3 casting cost card. So what are some of the 3 casting cost cards that you can do? One of which that's very dominant is Steel Leaf Champion. Super powerful to play on turn 2. You know, there's a 5/4 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. I mean, I've won games just swinging with this guy. There's been games where on turn 2, I throw this into play and my opponent concedes. They look at their hand and go, well, I don't have a way to deal with that for quite a while, so I guess I concede. You know, it's like, it's powerful, very powerful. And mono green is getting more and more popular in IRL Magic as well, with some of these new cards that came out. So, you know, that goes to show you that this is a strong deck, not just because I proved it was, but because, you know, a lot of people play it too. So yeah, Steel Leaf Champion, huge to play on turn 2. Another good turn 2 would be playing Rona, the Indomitable, because, yeah, sure, you can't block or attack with it right away, but you help set up for other things to do that they don't see coming. They're like, oh, you played a Rona. I would play a Rona on turn 2 because I didn't want it to be countered. Like, say I went first, and then, you know, that situation, he only has 1 land when it's my turn 2, so I can safely play Rona, get that into play, so make sure I get around it being countered at a later point, and then I bring in something like Prowling on the next turn and can't be countered, and also creature spells you control can't be countered, and it has 4 attack, which means that Rona can attack and block now. So really good synergization with that. And Prowling is the next card I was going to talk about, is super key, especially in a control heavy meta. This is a card you would play in your sideboard typically, but we don't have sideboards and there's no best of 3, so you have to be kind of ready for everything, and this card's very good at doing that. Now, if let's say my opponent went first and he has 2 land open on my turn 2, and I'm like, okay, so I would prioritize playing Prowling, because this allows me, because it's like, okay, he has mana open, he's ready to counter something with Essence Scatter, so I'm just going to throw this into play. Now that puts pressure on them, because they have to deal with that creature, right? And they also have to counter your other threats that you bring out on the following turns. And they have limited mana to do so. Sometimes they can, you know, get away with it depending on their hand, but this makes them have a better hand. Like, you got to have a better hand, or I'm going to quickly snowball this game because you can't deal with this guy right now. So they have to use a creature removal on it, which means now they're tapped out, which means I can play something else for free, and I don't, you know, so you can see why it works really well. Another 3-drop that's also quite good would be the Thrashing Brontodon. Very nice card to have, as we talked about earlier before. Definitely some good combos with this and Savage Stomp. So let's say you play this on turn 4, and you put a Dino into play, and then you use Savage Stomp on this. It only costs 1 because it's a Dinosaur. Gets a 1/1 counter. You fight something, kill it, get a nice trade for you, and then now it's 4 attack, which means your Rona can attack and block, right? So these combos can come into play, especially with this card here, Rona's Monument. Some decks run this, some decks don't. But I opted to run it, especially because I was limited on cards and I wanted to try it out, and actually did quite well. I'd say majority of the time this card did hold up pretty well. Makes my green creature spells cost 1 less, and then also when I play a green creature spell, doesn't mean that spell has to resolve. Because, yeah, sure, you can counter my Steel Leaf Champion that I tried to put into play, and I still get the 2/2 and trample on my creature and then swing, right? So it allows you, that's the whole point of the way that I put this deck together, is I want it to be able to be strong against control while also still being able to deal with aggro decks as well, because this deck can really take off and get bigger and better than other decks can too. So yeah, definitely a good card. This combos really well with a lot of things in your deck, like a Merfolk that only costs 1 now, a Kenra that only costs 1, a Kavu that only costs 1 or 4 if you use the kicker, Prowling that only costs 2, the Thrashing that only costs 2, you know, the list goes on. You know what I'm talking about. So really good for that. So you can even throw, you know, for 3 mana, you can throw in a Thrashing, or you can throw in a Prowler, and then you could use a Savage Stomp or something like that on one of your other creatures or something. So I mean, it's pretty good for the deck. It works out well. It is a legendary artifact, so you can't have 2 at the same time, but that usually was not going to be the case, especially with only running 2 of them. But yeah, so really good synergization between all that kind of stuff right there. Let's talk about the MVP though. I mean, the Prowling's great. The Steel Leaf can win you games for sure. But let's talk about the MVP, and that's going to be Carnage Tyrant. I love putting this card into play and then just knowing when I'm playing against a control player that they're like, crap, I can't do anything against this, right? Because the main culprit that's going to be able to do something against this would be Settle the Wreckage. Using Settle the Wreckage on just one creature kind of sucks, but this creature is going to kill you, right? So it forces them to get rid of those settles, which gives you good value, and that's great. But even then, what I like to do is I like to bait out a Settle the Wreckage. So Settle the Wreckage goes off on say it's like turn 4, and I swing with a couple creatures, and he settles the Wreckage. I'm like, oh no, I lost my Kavu and I lost my Branch Walker. Oh no, right? So like I lose those, but I get land. So then my next turn, I throw Carnage Tyrant into play. Now he doesn't have Settle the Wreckage. His Steal Away doesn't work. His Ixalan's doesn't work. His Cast Out doesn't work. None of his creature removal works. Because it's like, oh, now what are you going to do? And he's like, oh, I guess I concede, right? Awesome card, amazing card, won me so many games against control, and love it. So, yeah, super awesome. And did I mention it's awesome? Yeah, so get at least 1 if you can. I know it's a mythic, but get at least 1, and maybe even 2 if you can do it. And I only ran 2 the whole time, and it worked out pretty well, for sure. So let's talk about some of the other cards here, some of the other bomb cards in here. We have the Primal Hunger. This is like a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it sucks. Because if you don't have creatures on the field because he's killing all your creatures every single turn, which does happen, he just has a godlike draw and just keeps killing all your creatures every time you play one, well, this guy is not going to come into play, and he's just going to sit in your hand, and it's going to suck, right? You lose those games. Good, and then also it works well with Rona's Monument, because Rona's Monument, when you play things, let's say you play a Rona, right, and you give 2/2 to another creature that you have, this only costs 2, and it puts 5 attack into play, making it this cheaper and cheaper to play. So you can play like a few cards, buff things up, and then drop this in play for 2. That happens very often. So, don't count it out. It is good. I don't think it's a super must in the deck as far as like if you're very low on cards. I would say craft the Prowling, craft the Tyrant beforehand, craft the Ronas beforehand, like these kind of things before you do this, even though this is rare and some of those are mythic, but you know what I mean. So yeah, it's good, but anyway, let's talk about some of the other cards in the decks. I only had 1 Kenra, so Merfolk, Branch Walker, really nice for helping to filter the deck a little bit, and also when it costs only 1 with Rona, like buffing and buffing and buffing, which is nice. And then the downside of it is that, a couple downsides. If it explores a land, that can be either hurtful or helpful to you. If you need the land, if you don't need the land, it really sucks because it's only a 2/1 then. But then it does help filter a little bit for you. When it becomes a 3 attack, it's not 4 attack for Rona the Indomitable, so that's a little unfortunate. So you would have to like Savage Stomp on top of that, but that's a lot. That's like 5 mana to throw it onto your guy, and you have to win the Explorer. So Yeah, I mean, but it's a good card. It's definitely good. 2 for a 2/1, and it does the things that you need it to. It's not. It's there to chump block. It's there to help filter. It's not there to win the game. Resilient Kenra, really good, really good, because this card's another card. It's very resilient, as the name suggests, because even if it gets countered, oh no, I'll just eternalize it later, which that can't be countered because it's an ability, and that's great. So it helps you be a little bit more resilient with this deck, and buffs things up. Works really well with the Ronas. I mean, I had games, like, I'll give you an example. The game that I hit master on, I was going against black blue control, and I had this in my hand, and I was like, oh my god, please play, like, please tap out, like, play Scarab God. And he plays Scarab God. I'm like, yes. So then my next turn, I played him, and the Rona get the buff on my other guy. It was enough trample damage to get over top and win the game. So it was, and that was it. And then I hit master. So, yeah, excellent card. Chump block with this, so you can eternalize it later, and it can be cheaper. Another card that's really great would be the Untamed Kavu. Very versatile card. 2 for a 2/2, Vigilance Trample, but then you can also kicker it, make it a 5/5. It can cost 4 instead of 5 with the Rona, and it can cost 1 instead of 2 with the Rona as well. But the main appeal to this card, besides it being versatile, is the fact that it has Vigilance, which gives it protection from Seal Away, which is a very popular card that people use. I've had games where this guy was a 5/5 in play, and I knew my opponent had a Seal Away in his hand because he couldn't do anything to the creature. I just kept swinging, and you know, it gives you a blocker because it has Vigilance as well, but it just kept swinging and just took him out, and he couldn't do anything about it. So, you know, making your creatures, you know, hard to deal with is good against aggro control decks. So yeah, that's that card there. And then this card here, I got this while I was doing drafting, and it did pretty well in the draft, but I thought, I'll throw it in the deck and see how it performs. I'd say sometimes it worked out well and sometimes not. I mean, it does cost 7 to be able to fight and throw this into play, and sometimes it's not big enough, like it's a 5/5. Sometimes it's not big enough to fight something that you want it to fight, but, you know, it's... Most of the time, you're going to cast it for a 4 mana 5/5, which is pretty good still. I would say if you wanted to get rid of this guy, maybe add another Kenra into the deck or something like that. So, but yeah, I tried it out. Also, another card that's good for this would be, which I didn't have, was the Dinosaur that lets you draw a card, the Ripjaw Raptor. That's a good one too. It's another good 4-drop you could use instead of that guy. Yeah, so that's a good one. I didn't have it though, so I just went with this other guy, but you could do that replacement as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the decks that I used, and yeah, hopefully you guys learned some stuff in this video. If you have more questions, leave them in the comments. Come over to my live stream channel, twitch.tv/Shinobi Live, streaming pretty much almost every day, and I'd love to have you guys over there. Anyways, guys, till my next video, my name's Shinobi, and as always, thanks for watching.